and trying to decide how I could incorporate the theme overall, which the theme was to be Asian, obviously, which I did get that in there. But I wanted to be able to pull some of the colors scheme that she wanted in there, which was the green. So I ended up taking that stamp, and I stamped her several times, initially in black and with embossing powder, and I did use the ultra fine embossing black, which I believe this is by, if I'm not mistaken, this company is Stampability, I believe is who this was by. So once I got that to that point, I ended up taking my lady, and I stamped her multiple times, obviously, and ended up cutting her out. And, you know, at this point I have a raised object. At that point, then I took my watercolors, colored in her hair with black, different colorings of black. I also took to this, which I didn't bring out to show you, I colored in the little comb in her hair, made that to a gold color, and the tie-in and everything, the things hanging from her hair, I ended up taking a green metallic marker and filling those items in. So to this point, I'm like, okay, I've got that, but now I want to be able to get some sort of pattern into it, because obviously the original stamp has a pattern, but it's actually just an outline stamp, so it's not going to give you anything. So I ended up taking the same stamp, using my Versamark, stamped it multiple times again, but this time I stamped it onto a pattern paper, which this is bookmaker's paper for linings of books, and this was a swirl print that I've had for a long time, and I don't want to flare it out, but it's got blues, it's got the orange, it's got the green, it's got little flowers in it. And I ended up stamping that multiple times, and then what I ended up doing at that point was cutting that out, and then I glued it over my original piece. So now at this point in time, and if you notice, I didn't stamp this into gold because there's gold in the paper. I decided to emboss it in gold, and I used the Ranger Ultrafine Embossing Gold color for that. So now she is to this point. You can see her hair has the green, oops, let me bring that down so you can see it. She has green dangling, which matches the green in the back, and then the comb over here. And at this point, I didn't take dimensional glaze and ended up going over all her hair to give it, now if you can notice it's shiny, to give it some dimensions. You got to be careful because this will curl up, and you got to occasionally go back and flatten it down, and it will crack a little bit, but that's how you ended up getting some dimensions in her face and things like that. This point in time, I took the next step, still using my, I have twinkling H2Os, and what twinkling H2Os are, and I didn't bring them out to show you, they are little palettes of jars basically of paint, and they're watercolor paints, and you can't really see it, but when you get the stamp, this picture, you're going to recognize it. I ended up putting some of this white on her hands, which her hand is down at the bottom, and on her face. Also did some red on her lips, and then I also took a pale pink around the edges of her face over along the side. You cannot see it in this picture, but this gives it iridescent color. It glistens in the light, and this is a watercolor. It is not any additional spray. At this point, I decided I did enough glimmer misting. I did not want to glimmer mist again. So I'm to this point, and I said, okay, this is great, but it's not where I want to be. So I ended up taking just more tags and ended up spraying those. I think I did like 2 or 3 of these with some orange. If you notice in the main shirt, her hat, it has a lot of orange in it. And in this, I ended up using, I believe this was the Tussin Sun Glimmer Mist. Let these dry really well. When these were good and dry, I stamped over again and embossed in gold ultrafine again the fan. And on that fan then is now, actually, excuse me, I did it in black, not in the gold. So you can see that that fan is now there. There is some background stamping on the gold tag or the orange tag that I did prior to stamping over, and then I ended up cutting those out. So at this point now, I'm to this point where you can see I have her done, I have the fan cut out. Now I ended up doing some dimensions, and what I mean by dimensions is if you look at the side view of this, which I'm going to show you closer here, hopefully it will not blur. But the fan is, needless to say, set on with some glue dots, and that gives it a little more dimension and lifted it up. This point in time, I knew I needed to get the flower in there somehow. I could not really come up with a good way to do it, so I ended up finding these cute itty bitty little flowers, and they have a little pearl in the middle, so it is white. Let me try to bring this. I'm having a focus issue here, obviously. And on that flower, I ended up taking that, I sprayed it very gently with a little bit more of the sherbet glimmer mist to give it a little bit of pink. And then I ended up taking some alcohol inks that I have, which I ended up doing everybody's, I believe, in yellow. And that, needless to say, gave it a little bit of center. Now, if you look at my flower on mine here, this ended up blurring out quite a bit. So yours is not going to look like that. It's going to look white. That comes to you.